Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and here we have a knife that the second I seen it, I fell in love. I did. This was one of my grails, and it hasn't been out for that long, but when I seen it, everything just screamed Neeves Knives, like that I would love this. But I have a couple issues, one being a significant issue for me. Here's the certificate of authenticity really quick, and we're going to get into some things I love about the knife, and then I'm going to go over the issue. So, one, this machining is just gorgeous. It's beautiful. It is a button lock with an amazing blade. This is one of the sickest grinds I've ever seen. You can see how thin it gets. Look at the blade geometry there. Beautiful choil, and where the plunge grind is. I love all that life. You can sharpen it for years. Nice stout blade thickness, even though it does have a full hollow that is so thin. Beautiful satin. The fidget factor is on 10. You have flipper, reverse flick, and the front flipper, and then the sound. Oh, the sound. Now, with the flipper tab, you have so much leverage pulling down, because look at all this. You have so much leverage. Even if it's open, I can still deploy it reliably because there's so much leverage in that flipper tab. So when it's in the detent or when it's locked closed, man, you can crank that thing out. Now, the lock on this is very unique, and we're going to get to that here in a second. So you also have the fuller. Just letting you hear the sound for a second. The sound is so nice. But the lockup is, it's a button lock, but it's similar to like the compression lock, right? The difference is it doesn't use the stop pin to lock up, but it does have a liner put in right here. As you can see the liner right there. It's screwed in to this titanium scale. So this is all titanium. And you can see the liner there. Now there's a groove cut out on the blade right here. And the liner right here will drop into that groove when it's opened up. And then the button is attached to it so you can disengage it. Very cool, very unique. Nice, strong locking system. Now, like I said, the difference is they don't use a stop pin, to put where the liner falls in between the stop pin, like the compression lock, but it's similar, different, but similar. Now, the machining is so well done. You can see how the clip is like hidden into the milling, and there is another version of this, or another mill pattern, maybe even a couple, but one for sure. Then you have a landing zone underneath the clip, USA made, and you can see they wrote it right underneath the clip. Very cool where it was born at. The inside of it, you can see there's a big old pocket milled right here. So the work on this is, the machining is a 10. If it was a 1 out of 10, this is a 10 all day. The ergos just melt in my hand. It is so comfortable. And then coupled with this geometry, forget about it. So many things to love about this. But I do have a significant issue. I have a couple issues. One, when I choke up, I'll disengage it. And it's because the button is not in set. And because of this grind and everything, I want to be able to push cut. So I can go back here just fine, but look at how far away I am from the blade. yeah, I can like spread out a little bit, but I can't never do a push cut without it closing on me. Another thing is if I'm like using it and it does do that, and it closes, and it's so easy to do. It literally does it every time I go to squeeze for a push cut. If I'm pushing it through something, it's going to lock back up, right? Well, when it locks back up, it grabs my skin right here and pinches it. So it pinches it into this groove. Like right here, I'll just do it to my finger because it hurts really bad when I do it to my hand skin, because it pinches it like on the sides and in the middle. So it really bites me when my hand is like that, and like it's trying to get me right now. So like if it does disengage and then lock back up, it has a chance of pulling my skin in there. Now I do want to make it clear really quick that I did cut up cardboard just to make sure, because I wanted to see, is this thing going to disengage in my hand? And 99.9% of the time it didn't. It happened like twice during a push cut where it actually did, and I didn't know at first because like you're pushing pressure, so you really can't tell. But it wound up locking back in place. But like I said, what winds up happening is I can feel it in my skin where it's pulling my skin in there and it's gonna pinch it. So really, I don't think it'll functionally be a real serious issue. I think it would be something that's easily to avoid, but it can happen. Especially when, for me personally, when I'm choked up right here trying to get push cuts, or if I'm right here like this. This is like the worst part right there. So there is ways for me to manipulate my hand to avoid it, for sure. And Kara did not have that issue. Kara tried really hard. She couldn't get it to disengage. So it could be my exact hand. And I want to make that clear that it might not be an issue at all for anybody else. But it is an issue for me. Now, like I said, cutting with it, this thing cuts so good. It cuts so good. It's a cutting beast. The geometry is so good on it. It just blazes through materials. I mean, I could probably cut S's inside cardboard. It slices like a dream. And unless if you're really getting thick, dense cardboard with tape and things like that, you really can avoid a push cut because it's so thin. The geometry is so good, you can almost stay back here. But when you actually do need to get some good leverage, for me, and I was able to do a lot of push cuts, very comfortably without worrying. I just avoid really squeezing hard. I kind of let my hand fold around the button just a little bit. And I was safe. So, now utility cuts, I didn't do a lot of those. I did try it out a little bit, and it's fine. You do have to lift up quite a bit to get to that tip. So you do lose a lot of leverage, but the geometry being so thin, it goes really thin right here, and then from here to here it gets thick. So the geometry massively changes right here. So the tip is a little bit thicker, yet still acute enough for utility cuts and detailing work. The tip is higher than I prefer, but still doable. You can get by with it, no problem at all. Next thing is the stop pin. The stop pin, in the open position, you see the liner lock where it locks up, but in the closed position, it stops on the thinnest part of the blade, or a thin part of the blade. It stops right here. So I always say if you're going to put a stop pin like that, which I don't like anyways, do it on the thicker portion so it avoids chipping the blade. Not saying it's going to chip the blade. I don't know if it will or not. I'm just saying you have a better chance of it being more durable on the thickest part. Also, I don't like it being there because if you sharpen it out, or if you chip the edge and need to remove some steel, you don't want to have to sharpen away where the stop pin lands. This is fine because there's so much steel left. They left you a lot of steel to remove. So you have plenty of life to sharpen off. And that's another thing that I love about this knife is this plunge grind is beautiful. It's so far away from the edge. It's amazing. It looks like something I would draw up for a plunge grind and everything. Anyways, but I just don't like where it hits. I don't like the thought of it chipping there. I don't, like the thought of if I did have to put it in a different choil one day in the future, which I don't think you'd ever have to do. So I hate to say it's bad because for sharpening purposes or anything like that. So, but it landing on this thin of a blade, that could be an issue, right? Maybe not. Maybe it'll be just fine. I just prefer to just hit in the thicker area. Next thing, the jimping on the front flipper is slick as snot. There's no traction at all. I don't even understand why they put even jimping there. The front flipper, you're not using jimping for traction at all. You're basically using the pressure of the metal, just putting pressure against the metal to do it. You're not even using the jimping. The jimping on the regular flipper tab is good. A little bit of bite. Not really grippy, but it adds a little bit of traction, a little bit of bite. But if this jimping was here, it wouldn't even work. It'd be not functional. So I don't know why they use this jimping on the front flipper instead of using this jimping, right? Like, why didn't they use this jimping right here? Well, because it wouldn't work. So why would it work here, right? Use finer jimping. This jimping is just slick. Now, they also stopped it before they got to the top. There should have been 2 more jimps there so you could front flip it right there. I can do it, but I'm not doing it with the jimping or grip at all. Like, I'm having to use pressure to break it instead of it gripping, and I usually slip if I go up there. I have to go way down here, pressure right there at the top, and get it, just to avoid slipping. Anyways, I know I'm nitpicking, but this is a very expensive knife, so these things I'm nitpicking about, they're not deal breakers. The one kind of is. Now, I have one other one. I think it's only one other one. I don't like CPM 154. I just don't. There's only a couple steels that I try to avoid. Only a couple. And CPM 154 happens to be one of them. Why? Well, and this is a personal thing, so if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't matter. But to me personally, I'm a knife sharpener. I'm a professional knife sharpener. So edges, the way steels take edges, I love steels, right? I love steels. And there are only a couple steels that I tend to avoid, and CPM 154 happens to be one of them because it's a powdered version of 154 CM. So since it's a powdered version of 154 CM, the grain structure is very fine grained, and it makes it to where it's not a steel that takes a lot of bite. You have to sharpen it at a low grit in order for it to have bite. Otherwise, the higher you go up in grit, the slicker it gets. Now, does that mean it's not sharp? Of course not. Like, it'll shave hair, it'll cut through paper, it'll cut just fine. But you don't tend to get that, to me, that significant amount of bite that I want out of my edge. Like, if you use a polished edge, it gets really slick. A medium to high grit tends to be slick. It's almost like a coarse edge is similar to a medium grit. A medium grit is similar to what most steels are at a fine grit, and that's the way it kind of goes. Now, that's me. It's not that big of a deal. And 154 CM I love, though. 154 CM takes a lot of bite. That's a great steel, but the powdered version of it, in my opinion, I just don't prefer. I've sharpened a lot of it, and I'm just, after sharpening so many steels, like hundreds of steels, I don't even know if that's true, but after sharpening so many different steels, so many different times, thousands of times, you learn what steels you like more than others. Right? And I learn and know what steels I prefer over the others. And CPM 154 has always been a steel that I've never really been satisfied with the edges. Now, for you, it might not be a big deal. So that's just me. But that's something that he could easily, change or do different. I'm hoping that this other thing is something he maybe considers in the future. Because like I said, man, I love this knife so much. I love it, love it, love it. So everything else I can pretty much look past. But I can't look past this thing closing in my hand. Now, if I take another button lock over here, you see the button is in set. So even if I squeeze this as hard as I can, it's not even rocking, not even a little bit. I cannot squeeze this enough to make it disengage. I can't even do it with my thumb unless if I'm like really trying to, or if I actually mean to. So you have to actually mean to disengage this. With this one, I can accidentally disengage it so easily, so easily. And for that reason, man, I hope in the future he does something to where it insets to where you can't just accidentally disengage it, especially when you're in a position that you want to be in, because this is where I want to be, right? I don't always want to be back here, cutting. Not saying I can't, and I won't, because I would. And at first, I love this knife so much that I almost wanted to just just ignore it. Like, so what if you cut a finger off? Who cares? They grow back. Get over it. Like, I love the knife so much, I want to just look past it. I really do. It is that great of a knife. The sound, the ergos, the acoustics, the grind, just the machining, man. This thing is, it's so amazing. I love this knife, man. I want it so bad, but that little detail, that one especially. Now with the other ones mixed, it just really tops it off, but the other ones I could almost just like get past. I just can't the one. And I hate to sit here and beat a dead horse, guys. It's an amazing knife. If you own it, man, don't let me upset you at all. You have a great knife. Good for you, man. I'm jealous. I'm jealous, truly jealous. I want one bad, and I almost bought one. I really did. Then I finally got an opportunity to check one out, and I'm so happy I did. And it still makes me want one because they're so badass. But man, it's just that one thing, man. It stops it for me. As much as I love it, I do have to. And let me just argue for it really quick. It's very unlikely you'll get cut because the way this choil's set up, you'll hit the choil. Every time I've disengaged it, I've hit my finger. Even if I'm back here, it'll hit my finger. So you have to be way down here to get your finger, and you're not going to disengage it at that point. So maybe it was thought of, but it pinches on the way back if I'm up here. All right, if I'm back here, no, it won't pinch me. So, but it will pinch me if I'm right here. So, just, anyways, like I said, I'm not going to be a dead horse. I love you guys. And I finally got to check one out. I know it hasn't been that long since it's been out, but I felt like it was because the second I seen it, I was just like, I was drooling. I love you guys. Peace.